Welcome to the Business Made Me Do It podcast, where we cover business, marketing, and overall growth. As you heard in the intro, I am your host, Caleb Shore. The three pillars of the podcast are business, marketing, and overall growth. And we got a special guest today, Zach Wright. He is the creator of the iMEO company, iMEO, which we'll go into what that exactly means. The main focus he has is helping companies improve management, employees, and organizations, which is a huge thing that most companies do not do, I have found out. He also has a full-time job at the regulations technology company in Charlotte, which we'll keep unnamed at this time. Zach, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Caleb. How's it going?
Good, man. Good. I know we've talked a lot about this day and getting you on the podcast. I'm super excited for it, man.
Yeah, me too. So we're still in our infant stage here, so I'm glad that you brought me on even in this stage.
Yeah. I mean, my company as well, Conversion Stream, we're brand new to it. Still growing, still learning, but that's kind of the underlying theme with any business. I feel like is you constantly need to grow, constantly need to change things and adapt. And I'm sure you're going through the same thing, man. For all the listeners, tell everybody like who you are, what you do, what iMEO is all about.
Yeah. So iMEO, as you mentioned, stands for Improving Management, Employees, and Organizations. And what we really try to do is tackle consulting and business coaching from a different aspect. So whenever you think about consulting, you might think of somebody coming in and turning one area around and then kind of jumping out and leaving them to fend for themselves. What we're really trying to do at iMEO is come into the company, analyze it, figure out the root causes. And instead of just turning it around from a business perspective or organization perspective, we're looking at how can we change this company and improve it for the long term. And that includes management, employees. But so that's the company. And then about me. So I majored in psychology. We both went to Belmont Abbey,
Yep.
our alma mater. And it was there that I really got the idea for iMEO. So I did a thesis paper on the happy/productive worker thesis, which basically says the happier the employee is, the more productive they are, which sounds kind of counterintuitive or maybe even like common sense. But like you said, a lot of organizations don't really focus on that. So that's a little bit of my background. I do have a Lean Six Sigma certification that kind of helps with the process side. So going into the organization and improving it, the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. And then I'm also getting my MBA from the Jack Welch Management Institute. Right now, I'll graduate in December 2020. So it's been about 3 years. I'm ready for that.
How do you, so you mentioned something earlier, how do you get happier employees?
Yeah. So there's a method called the job characteristics model, or actually a framework where it breaks down 5 different elements that will help generate a happy employee. So that's skill variety, you have task identity, and then task significance. And then there's 2 more that I'll get to in a second, but the skill variety. So to kind of put it in a reverse example, the lack of skill variety is somebody working on a assembly line. So let's say that you have to can jars. So you get the jar, you put the lid on it, you pass it down. You get the jar, you put the lid on it, and you pass it down. So obviously that's not a lot of skill variety. And then task identity is the ability to see the job to completion. So kind of another reverse example on an assembly line, but using a car, is the way that they do it now is you have one specific task. Like, let's say I'm going to put on the left door, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to pass it along to the next person that's going to put on the right back door. So they don't necessarily get to see the completion of the job. So that's a reverse example. And then the task significance is the degree to which the job has an impact on the lives around them, which I think is one of the most important. Because if you hear about people being unsatisfied with their position, a lot of time it comes from not having that meaningfulness related to what they're doing. So those are the three things that really factor into that. And then the last two is autonomy, which is obviously the employee's decision on how they perform the work. So giving them a task and then allowing them to achieve it however which way, but as long as they achieve it, right? And then the last one is, I think, something that managers specifically forget to do, which is feedback, and more specifically, feedback in real time. So, for example, if you perform a task and it was this big project and then it does really well, but then you don't receive any feedback, in your mind, you're kind of thinking, well, was it a good thing or was it a bad thing? You don't really necessarily know. Or if you made a mistake at a position, the manager should be able to provide you with some feedback to let you know where you stand, right? So those are kind of the 5 characteristics that formulate different things as far as a job characteristic. And then there's some moderating factors that are involved in there. So to really enhance the employee satisfaction, it comes from knowledge and skill, growth, need, strength, and then the context satisfaction. So to kind of break those down is knowledge and skill. You provide the correct knowledge for a positive outcome. So a lot of time that's proper training. And a lot of companies, what they'll do is they'll provide kind of a streamlined training, which is fine. But to take it a step further, training is ongoing, right? And I think that's where a lot of companies miss out on. They'll train for like that first month of what a lot of people call like boot camp. And then from there, it's kind of off to the races. But to really help out, you can have mentors that kind of guide people through there, but you want to make sure that it's proper training for that specific position, right? And then the growth needs strength, that's the requirements of the job, or the requirements of the job to match what the employee's needs are. So if it doesn't match the employee's experience or the needs, then the employee's experience will be a negative outcome, right? If it does match it, then it will increase that satisfaction. And then the last thing was the context satisfaction. So to what degree is the employee satisfied with the context of the job? And I think one of the ways to look at this is whenever you think about starting a new position, you're excited, you like it, you know all these things that are potentially going to happen, and you can take those on positively. But then over time, like kind of going back to the skill variety, is if it just becomes repetitive, then you're like, well, this is just boring now. So now I'm not satisfied with the context of the job. So I know that was a long answer, but it's a key detail of like moderating factors that go into the 5 elements that create a satisfied employee.
Yeah. And it's very complicated. Like
Yeah,
it is a
yeah,
very complicated process just from that. I mean, I think maybe the first step with that is realizing those, 5 things that make an employee happy. I
yeah,
feel like most managers, at least from my experience when I used to have a 9 to 5 job, one thing you said with feedback, I didn't get a lot of
yeah,
feedback. It was a lot of feedback that essentially came from within. Like if I
yeah,
failed at something or I wasn't good enough, I would know that I wasn't good enough versus my manager higher up telling me I wasn't good enough, or,
yeah,
failed a project or missed a deadline or whatever it is. But I think a lot of companies, especially from my, recent experience in the job industry, they just don't know. They're not even aware of that. And if you're not aware of it, obviously you're not going to take action on it and execute. One
yeah.
thing I did want to circle back to, what's your website? Where can people
Oh yeah,
find you?
so I guess that's helpful. iMEOcompany.com. So imeocompany.com.
Boom. Okay, cool. So we heard a little bit about you, what iMEO stands for. I'm super interested in like where you came from,
Oh
wherever
yeah,
all the guests, like what your history is, where you're at, right now. Because a lot of people see the starting a company, and we'll get into your course and all that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
a lot of people see the, the success and starting and taking the leap. But like, take me back a little bit with like where you were in high school and college, and like, did you have a business sense? Like, give me a little bit of background about you personally.
Yeah, so we'll start at high school. So my junior year, I like to start there because that's kind of where the rough patches are. So my junior year, I started a new school. It was a new school that was built in China Grove, where we kind of grew up. You were from Enochville. But so we had that. I had to transfer, or the districts were made where I had to go from South Oran to Carson. So I was a new student in a new school with new people. I was also dealing with some other things, life, personal. I had a friend passed away at, he was 21, I was 13, but it was somebody that I looked up to a great amount. So I was trying to deal with that, and I found different ways to cope from that. I won't get too specific, but basically my junior year, I had 2 suspensions, pretty much in a month and a half, and they were both 2-week suspensions. So that means that I had 1 week to get suspended again, which isn't good.
Talent.
Yeah. So I had dedication there back then too. But no, so from that, it was actually a positive there for a little bit, because from there up to that point, I really only knew sports, and I went to school so I could play sports. And being able to, or I guess not being able to, but being restricted to play sports, it taught me that, okay, I can't get through life with just sports alone. And I met this great teacher, I think you might know him, Mr. Pope. And he really took me under his wing. And I remember one specific thing that he said, because I cracked a joke in his U.S. history class. And he said, "Zach, let's go outside." I was like, "Oh crap!"
Not a good
Yeah.
sign.
But it was what he said here that really started the mindset change. He said, "Zach, anybody can be a class clown, but not everybody can be smart." And the reason is because if you're a class clown, like, you just have to be funny. You can do whatever it is. You know, you can be physical, you can be verbal with whatever it is that's funny. But to be smart, if you're not born with it, or even if you are born with it, you have to work for it, you know? And I really took that to heart. And from that conversation, I started making straight A's. I think I made a couple B's here and there. But from that conversation, I actually started thinking about college. And it's strange, because the people around me, they were talking about college, but I never really thought about it. And luckily, my senior year, I was able to get back on the baseball field, and I think we were both recruited by Chris Anderson.
Yep.
That he was part of South Rand Legion, and then now part of Belmont Abbey. But he recruited me, and that was literally the only college that I got into. Like, and the only reason I got in was, I'm pretty sure, because of baseball. So good and bad, right? But so once I got into Belmont Abbey, we both went to Belmont Abbey at the same time. So just to put it into perspective, when did you graduate?
2012.
2012. I graduated in 2016.
I had to think about that for a second.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2016. A lot of people don't know that. So that's 4 years after I was supposed to graduate. So
4 victory laps.
4 victory laps. That's right. I felt like Van Wilder. So what happened in there from that time was I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I used to say I suffer from depression and anxiety, but I don't suffer from it. I was diagnosed with it. So it's something that I have, that I'm able to deal with now. But during that time, I wasn't aware of it. So I dropped out my 4th year, took a semester off, and then I came back, and then I dropped out again, came back, dropped out again. And the story kind of continues until I finally went back for the final time. But what was strange was I went back, but at this time, all the other times I quit my job to go back to school, and then I would run out of money. And then I found out that, like, kind of money kind of fuels me in a sense, along with passion. But at that time, like, I didn't have any money. So it was kind of like, if I don't have it, then my mind does a little crazy thing. So, but I finally went back, I graduated. And during that time of doing the happy/productive worker thesis, I found organizational psychology, which is kind of where I discovered the job characteristics model and what I went through earlier. So I know that's kind of a long story too, but from that time, I was able to shift my mind. And so I do life coaching and business coaching. That's what iMEO company does. And within that, I'm able to use my journey of reshaping my brain, which is actually hard work. It's like exercising the mind, just
Very
like
hard.
exercising, yeah, just like exercising your body. And now I use that for my clients that I have. And it's been very beneficial, and we've received a lot of good feedback so far.
Cool, man. Yeah, it's crazy. Like what for you, what shifted? Obviously that Mr. Pope statement.
Yeah.
You're getting A's and B's, but why do you think you kept dropping out and coming back? And then is it determination? Was it something else going on? Like, why did you continue to stick it out?
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of a few things. So I know that my parents wanted me to graduate. Um, but even deeper than that, I wanted to complete what I started, you know. I think that using depression and anxiety was kind of a crutch there for a little while, where it was like, okay, well, the reason you can't do that is because you have this. But then at some point, and I wish I could say it was like that moment or there was like one specific time, but I think gradually you really start seeing things, and you put like Steve Jobs says, you connect the dots looking back.
Yep.
um, but I do think that there was a positive psychology class that I took as part of my major, that we had to do an exercise where you change just one thing in your life for the better. And at that time, I was like addicted to working out. I still work out, but not not as addicted or crazy about it. But that one thing that I shifted was um, just eating leaner meat. You know, so I switched from like ground beef to fish and chicken. And what I found was, for me to continue on that journey, I had to find ways to keep myself motivated, which actually kind of, so over the years, I used to want to find out how people stay motivated. So if you look at somebody like Tony Robbins, like you're gonna say like he is always motivated. But the truth is, it's not that he's motivated. He has these habits and routines that he's formed over the years that he's done it. So whenever he wakes up, he doesn't even think about being motivated. He thinks about what he has to do to achieve his goals. And that's, I think, that positive psychology exercise and project really shaped my mind, where it was that I was creating habits, but at the time I was calling it motivation. But yeah, I think that was the shift, is creating those habits that become a part of your normal routine.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I wanted to touch on the Tony Robbins things. I've seen videos b- before he goes on stage, like getting in the
Oh
zone
yeah.
is what people call it. It's crazy, man. He has his trampoline that he goes into, and he like gets in like a corner, and just you can just tell
Yeah,
he's just turning it on. Like he jumps on his
exactly.
trampoline, and then he's like, no, no, everybody knows don't talk to him during this routine. And
Yeah.
it's crazy that like even those guys have routines. I mean, that's a very extreme routine, but
Hmm.
getting up early, not hitting the snooze button, which I'm terrible at, like reading and meditating and exercising, it's just
Yeah.
creating those routines that make you a successful thing. And one thing I want to touch on with you, it's like you don't do that overnight. It doesn't happen in
No.
30 days. It doesn't happen in 365 days. It happens years and years and years of work. It's not something easy. It's legit work to
Yeah.
create these habits. Like brushing your teeth. I'm sure when you first started that, it was very hard to do and you forgot to do it, and you felt resistance, and it's everything, man. It's just people
Yeah.
don't think about routines as work
It's true.
nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So essentially you come in I want to jump kind of now with what you're offering with the business and life coaching. You'll come
Yeah.
into a company, and then you'll essentially talk me through that process. Like, what does that process work like? Like, say you're
Yeah.
auditing my company. How does that work?
So a lot of times what will happen is it starts with a conversation. You know, I want to learn more about what their issues are, what their pain points are, where they were and where they want to go and where they are currently. And you mentioned Lean Six Sigma certification. So what they really try to do and preach in that methodology is get to the root cause, because, and I talk about this a lot, is a lot of companies will shoot for that short-term win, which is great. You want to have the short-term wins, but for us, we want to have the short-term wins with the long-term in mind, right? So we want to get to the root cause. And so the process is to learn about the owner, learn about the company, learn about the processes and the people. And then from there, we can define what that root cause is. What are their biggest pain points, and kind of start from there. And it's all different for everybody, I'm sure you know, but that's kind of where we start at.
Yeah. And I mean, as you're talking through that, that's literally what we do as well. It's like
Yeah.
first conversation, we learn about the business and the owner. And then it's like, okay, if they're at $1 million in revenue and their goal is 1.5, it's like, okay, if you don't change anything, nothing is going to change, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So similar type conversations we're having. So once you kind of learn about them, then what? Like, what are some actionable items that a listener now can go and execute on if they're either wanting to start a business, or let's just say for this example, they have a business and they're not where they want to be.
Okay. So if they have a business and they're not where they want to be, really, I think it's looking at yourself. But let's say that we come in there and we help you do that. A lot of times that's kind of what it is. You know, just because you start a business doesn't necessarily mean that you're self-aware. So if we can bring that self-awareness to the owners or to the company, then they can kind of look at it through a different glass. So as far as like tangible takeaways that they can do right now, we were kind of talking about this before, where, you know, honestly, if they can't afford like a consulting or something, go to YouTube, go to Google, or LinkedIn has a lot of articles too. Try to find something in their specific area that they have an issue with, and see what they can do with themselves. But as far as our company, what we'll do, we'll go through there. We'll talk to each person as an interview, as I mentioned, and then we'll break it down. So in technology, they use like a work breakdown structure. And that's kind of what we do, because we don't want to take on everything all at once. We want to break it down into these small steps, kind of going back to the routine. You don't want, you can have a big picture goal, and some owners, they'll get so focused on that they can't reverse engineer it and bring it back to the first step. So that, to me, that's kind of like the big part, is to break it down into those actionable items. It's kind of hard to get into it without having a specific example, but that's what I would say is, like, they can break it down and make it tangible. And then you can break it into weekly, monthly goals, or quarterly goals, or even annually goals. But you want to be able to start somewhere, and that's kind of how we approach it.
Yeah, and just taking the huge elephant, like, I'm sure you've heard the saying, how do you eat an elephant? Or I might be butchering that, but it's like one bite at a time. And it's like, you can't eat it all at once. It's impossible. No one can, not even Tony Robbins or Gary Vee or whoever it is. But it's like, okay, what is one thing I can do right now or today that could put me on the right track for that long-term goal? And it seems like you go ahead.
Yeah. So sorry to cut you off, but like, as you were speaking, so one of the other things that is very tangible is to figure out what ballpark you're playing in, right? Like, sometimes business owners, they'll start and they'll have that grand vision and they want to be the next Google or the next Amazon, but the likelihood of that happening is very low. So find out who you are as a company. And that's what we also help with, is like creating the mission and vision of your company. Like, why did you start this? Go back to that. Go to who you are. Double down on who your target audience is. And I'm not sure. She went to Belmont Abbey as well, but Maria Abbey, I kind of bounce ideas off of her. She's the leader of Running Myself Together. Little plug in there. But but she really helps me too. So I kind of have a coach in a sense, but she really helped me target down the audience that we focus on, which is small businesses and startups in services or software as a service, because those kind of reflect on my background. But diving into specifically, like she'll even go into say, okay, your target audience is a mother of 3 that has a part-time job and has this going on, and her sister is Karen or something, So she really like goes into detail, and I've kind of adopted that from her that we implement here too.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. We like the more and more we talk, the more I'm like seeing similarities with the conversations I'm having
Yeah.
with business owners. Cause like we literally do an exercise where we'll have the owner or whoever it is, maybe it's not the owner, but maybe
Yeah.
CEO or whatever. We'll have them do an exercise of, hey, write down your target audience, who they are, be as specific as possible. And it makes them kind of get the wheels turning, because a lot
Yeah.
of times people are just busy running the day to day and they don't really focus on, they don't have enough vision and setting the mission with like, who are you going after? Is it a
Yeah.
mom with 3 kids, or is it a single male age 45 and up? Like,
Yeah.
what is it specifically? So we do an exercise where we'll kind of give them homework, where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, write down your marketing goals, who your target audience is, what your vision for your company is, and are you there? And if not, why do you think you're not there?
Yeah. And that, so, I think you mentioned it before on another podcast, but so you mentioned about growing the business versus doing the business. I actually so I'm a big fan of The Prophet. Have you ever seen that show?
Yep.
Okay.
Marcus Lemonis.
Yes. So I love him. I love that show. He was actually doing a LinkedIn speaking. Now this is like years old, but it's on YouTube. And one of the owners was saying she was focusing on doing the business rather than growing the business. And I thought that that's very insightful of her to be self-aware in the first thing. But then the second thing is, whenever it comes to that, that's where like your company can come in and really help them out, because if they're, you have to focus on doing the business, but then also you have to be able to bring awareness to it, or it's like having a diamond lost in a haystack and nobody knows that it's there because it's hidden, right? So that just reminded me of that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You have to know the difference. And actually, there is a book which is next on my list, E-Myth Revisited.
Nice.
One of my mentors just bought me this and sent it
Awesome.
to me, and he talks about, I can't, I've read it once, but it was years ago. There's like I think
Yeah.
4 levels, and then you have to remove yourself from working in the business to working on the business. And
Yeah.
that's where you move up to like the manager position is what he calls it. And
Hmm.
then / business owner. And there's different levels,
Yeah.
but it's very powerful. And I don't think people really understand it to execute on it from
Yeah.
what I'm seeing. And we focus on small businesses, probably very similar to who you're going after as well. It's like,
Yeah.
you have to be self-aware to know, and also to execute on that knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big thing. Because so you mentioned project management office lead. One of the things that I do in my current position, so not necessarily my company, but my current position, is we focus on execution, because we have a planning phase that we get all the requirements, we make sure that everybody understands what they need to do, but then at some point you have to jump over onto execution, because if you stay in planning, you're never going to see any results. So I like that the story that you said, because I feel like sometimes you can get into that analysis paralysis piece, and then
Right.
you lose the part on execution. And I've even found myself doing that sometimes with building iMEO, because it's fun to create like some Canva templates and do some of the research where it's like, okay, the average entrepreneur is 40 years old. I thought it was younger. So that's fun facts. But where does that come into play versus, okay, now I got to execute? Like, I can give all this, but like, how can I close this? How can I start helping these people? Because that's the main goal.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I'm a research, like I'll research the crap out of something,
Yeah.
and I'll find myself not taking action on the things that I just learned. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I still struggle with it today, where it's like, how, I like, for example, this podcast. I've literally been plotting this podcast in my head for 3 years, and I
Yeah.
finally just pulled the trigger because I've just been sitting on the idea for so long. But I think these successful people are the ones that think less and do more.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see
even
that.
even when it's not fully thought out, like you build the plane on your way down. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard that
Yeah. Yeah.
statement.
Yeah. What
So
is
it's
it? The
just
CEO of LinkedIn, or it used to be Reed. I think it's Reed
Hastings.
Hoffman. Hastings is Netflix.
Yeah, you're
Hoffman,
right. You're
yeah.
right.
But no, that's exactly right. And with working with like small businesses, sometimes it's hard to do that. And so within iMEO, what we've done is we created an online course. So it's a 10-week online course for people who are just starting their business or have an idea and they want to figure out how to accomplish that. So it blends right into what we're saying here is a lot of people have that idea, but they won't do anything about it. So what our program or our online course helps to do is create what is called a business built to last. So that first week is finding out how to choose the right business, right? So a lot of times people will think that they have the greatest idea in the world, but then they'll do that market research, which is week 2, and then they'll figure out, oh crap, nobody wants to buy this.
Mm-hmm.
So the real goal with business built to last is to help people that want to become entrepreneurs reduce that risk of taking that leap, you know? So in addition to market research, we also do startup cost. We do trying to find the right business entity. And then we even go through business plan. So building your own business plan, your value proposition. So how are you differentiated versus your customer, or excuse me, your competitor. And then we go into emotional branding. That's a little bit different than just branding. You're tying emotions to
Yep.
what somebody's going to buy. And I'll go a little bit deeper on that. So with emotional branding, I've done this for my father's company, where we took his story, which is kind of a rough story. He had a brother that passed away from a gunshot from a gun that hasn't been shot in 16 years. What we did was we wanted to take his memory and make it live on. So my dad's company used to be RJ Wright Company. Now it's Thomas Allen Renovations, which is his brother's name, Thomas Allen. And our slogan, so to say, is turning the past into your future. And really, it's a renovations company. So what we're trying to do here is turn something that's ugly and make it beautiful again. So whenever you think about renovations, that's what we're doing. We're providing an older situation or something that's ruined, and we're reapplying what was beautiful about it before, and making it new again. So you can do it that way from a branding perspective, or you can connect with somebody. You can connect. So I think Nike does this a really great way, where they're connecting the emotion to that customer. They're saying, hey, we're Nike, we're a big brand, but actually we understand what you go through on a daily basis. I think they just had a commercial come out that was very similar to that.
Yep.
So you can do it in those different ways. And then the last thing is in the online course is to launch, go to market strategy. So really from week 1 to week 10, and there's templates included, there's quizzes to make sure that you're retaining the information. There's videos from me, so you should get excited about that. No, it's a little awkward me being on camera, but it's okay.
It is. Me too.
Yeah. But no, so like the by the 10th week, even if you just start with an idea, there's templates that you will be able to leave on the 10th week feeling comfortable and excited to launch your business. So we created that in the sense, in the still the aspect of iMEO, where if we can target the company before it even starts, then we can help them create a business built to last, but also with keeping the employee in mind. So it kind of comes full circle.
Yeah, it's like keeping it on the flywheel. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if you're familiar with the term, but it's like, okay, if I provide this service, there should be a flywheel of other services that help
Yeah,
all of them kind of
exactly.
move upward together. And it seems
Exactly.
like you guys are doing that. Just question with that, and I want to talk about your dad's business because it's a
Yeah,
crazy result that you
yeah.
return. But first, are you offering the course included in your consulting, your business and life coaching?
So, so the online course it's $200, and the way that I did that was it's 10 weeks. So you break it down. It's actually $199.99, which is $19.99 per week if you break it down like that. And what I'm doing with that is anybody who goes through that process will get me as a business coach for 10 weeks, basically free. So if you have, I'm the instructor, it's all self-led. But if you have a question, you have my email, you have my phone number, you can reach out to me, and you basically get 10 weeks free of a business coach.
Yep.
And then from there, hopefully we can partner up and move forward. But it depends on how we connect and all that. I know that you had a podcast earlier where you were talking about you don't always take on the customer that comes to you. You really have to vet them out. Do they work well with you? And we kind of do the same situation where if the person isn't willing to put in the work, then honestly, that's not my kind of people. I want people who are inspired to grow, to become the best and reach their greatest potential. So they do get me for 10 weeks, but if they don't have that kind of personality fit, then we might part ways afterwards.
Right. And that, yeah, I mean, the work has to be split up, and you have to have people that are willing to put in the work as well. One thing I did
Yeah.
want to touch on before we hit the rapid fire round, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
So your dad's company, they're a renovation company. You increased their what by 1,000%?
So their revenue by 1,152%.
Okay. I
In
thought that
one
was a
year.
typo for a second.
No,
It's not a
I always
typo,
have to say
people.
that. I always have to say that because I usually just stick to the 1,000%. And they're like, that has to be an extra zero.
Right. I mean, 100% in revenue, like that's a huge increase, but
Yeah.
1,000% in revenue. Talk to me how that went down.
Yeah. So it was kind of the process of iMEO before I knew that was the process. Because I was looking around, and actually Gary Vee mentioned something, and his past was he kind of helped his dad's company. And from hearing one of his stories, I was like, okay, well, I love business. I don't have as much experience as I want. What is something around me that I can do or contribute to? And I did this for free, right? Now I get a little percentage, but I did it for free for 3 years. And what I did was I went in there, I talked to him. It's a one person owner, so we subcontract a lot of different things. But I went in there, I understood, I tried to understand the current state, I tried to understand the past, and then I tried to understand the future state. And in Lean Six Sigma, there's a value stream map. So it's kind of like these little pictures that connect to different things. So like the sales process will connect to the close, which will connect to buying the material, and then it connects to the workers doing the labor, and so on and so forth. So I did that, and I noticed that the lead time was just ridiculous, which lead time is how long it takes to complete the full project from sales to completion of the project. And it was just ridiculous. I think it was like almost 30 days. And what I did from there was I looked at that, and the process time, which is all the things that you do to get to the complete project, but it doesn't involve the time in between. So the lead time is the full process, so that would be 30 days, and then the process time was only like 4 days. So there was a big gap in between there. So what I did was I analyzed that, and then I worked with him on different processes on how can we shorten this phase? How can we shorten this phase? How can we make this phase more effective? And so that was one of the things that we did. And then another thing, which is what we talked about with the online course, is the market research. A lot of people forget this part. So what we realized was he was doing 30 to 35%, making 35% on a final project. So that was the profit. And then whenever I did the research, really there was 50% that he should be taking home at least, right? So the combination of shortening the process and making it more effective, along with doing the market research and changing those margins, just kind of came in and made the big difference. That's the $1,000 increase.
It's a perfect storm, you know?
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of people don't know to do that. And if you don't know to do that, that's whenever you bring on a business coach, a business consultant that can help you. You know, not everybody knows everything, and you need to know that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to get a specialist. And we preach the same thing. We have people on our team that specifically do Facebook, specifically do Google, and specifically do email, and then the follow-up. So it's like, I used to be that. I understand what you're saying. I used to be that person where it's like, okay, I do everything. I do a website, I do graphic design, but it's like, you can't do everything well. And if you do, you're going to be performing at, subpar capacity. So it's finding those specialties.
And speaking on that, I recently saw something. So if you think about it, it's not even, can you do it or can you not, but it's more so this kind of goes into Lean Six Sigma too, not to make this all about Lean Six Sigma, but if you hire somebody that is 10 times better than you at a specific thing, they're going to do that at half the time that you did it versus the time that it took you to do it, right? And a lot of people will see, okay, well, we're hiring a specialist that is this price, so it's ridiculous, we can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do it, which takes time away from this other project that extends the project. But what they don't understand is this salary that you're paying this person is reducing the time that it takes to complete it. So you're actually not paying them as much as you think, because they can do what you do in 2 hours in 30 minutes, So
yeah,
I
and then
saw that.
What do you do for that other hour and a half that you just freed up your time? Then that is probably dedicated to something that you're very good at.
Exactly. And that's kind of part of iMEO as well, is we define clearly the roles that specific people should do. Because if you can do that, not only are they going to be happier because that's their thing, the company is going to be more productive because they're happier, and then that should raise the bottom line.
Yeah. And then that's essentially how you improve management, employees, and the organization as a whole.
Exactly.
Boom. Nailed it.
I like it.
It makes sense, man. I think you're definitely onto something. Super excited for your growth. Obviously, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. But just wrapping up, man. I'm anything we didn't cover that you wanted to kind of touch on, then we'll hit the rapid fire round.
Not that I can think of. I think we covered a lot of different things in a short period of time.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into it. What is one thing people, sorry, let me rephrase that. One thing not many people know about you.
Well, I guess anybody listening to this, they might not know that I rap. I feel like I had to get that in there because I do believe in transparency, right? So, but yeah, I've been rapping for, I don't even know how long now. I'm 30.
Been a while.
I think I started in 13. So I do have some songs on iTunes and Spotify. Just look up Z Wright. Yeah. WRIGHT.
Yeah.
Also, I do have a blog, the writing blog, and it's my last name. So the WRIGHTINGBLOG.com.
Yep.
And that one I dive into a lot of details. So, and it could be management, it could be leadership, it could be my personal story, business tips and things like that.
Cool. The content model, I love it. If you had an additional 10 grand handed to you right now, where would you spend it in your business?
I think a lot of it would probably have to do with marketing. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I need to focus on.
Okay. What is one thing you're excited about right now?
Everything that's going on, everything. So, I mean, PMO lead at the current position, iMEO. I'm excited to see where this can go. because I do think that it's a different view on consulting and business coaching. And then obviously the online course, helping people get to that point where they can feel comfortable to take that leap of faith. So those are things I'm excited about.
Cool. Cool. What is one crazy thing business has made you do?
Oh, I don't know. I'm obsessed with business. So I think everything that I do is business. So probably the craziest thing is changed my life.
Favorite app on your phone no one's heard about?
Oh, no one's heard about. Oh, that's tough.
Sleeper app.
I would have to look at my phone. I mean, honestly, I use Word on my phone, which is kind of strange. Yeah.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
Cool. Who should I interview next that's in your network?
Oh, either Shivam Patel or Maria Abbey.
Okay.
I think those would be good people to interview.
I actually reached out to Maria last night.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm sure I can get her on. So that is it, man. Great job. You passed the rapid fire round. Just to kind of wrap up, where can people go to find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, so we have LinkedIn page, Facebook page, iMEO company, website, imeocompany.com. So imeocompany.com, the writing blog, and then my Instagram, my personal Instagram is Zach A. Wright. So ZACHAWRIGHT.
Cool, man. Thanks for coming on. It was fun.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I appreciate it.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Zach Wright of the iMEO company, imeocompany.com. Go check him out. He's got a online course as well. Yeah, just a super interesting guy. We played baseball together, which we didn't even touch on in college, but he's up to big things. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and yeah, cue the outro.